Hello and welcome to video discourse 19. So today I'm going to talk to you a bit more about living beyond a place of conflict, living a place of pure sustenance. This ties into like manifesting money. It ties into going deeper with our spiritual practice, and it also ties in deeper with becoming more powerful in our lower chakras. So basically, in this reality, there's usually some kind of conflict going on with something or another. It can be a conflict in the outer with people or groups. There could be an inner conflict where we're struggling with some aspect of ourselves. But basically, more often than not, there's always some kind of conflict going on in our consciousness on some level or another. Now, in order to exist in a place of perfect peace and to get a proper sustenance from source, it's necessary to get rid of all of that. It's necessary to exist in a place beyond all the conflicts. Now, there's nothing wrong with conflict in itself. One shouldn't label it as bad or see it as negative, because it's simply a stage on the journey. So what happens here in this 3D world of duality, there's like a clash of egos. We come here as spiritual beings from like a higher place, and we're kind of like interacting with beings coming from different places. There's a big clash of opinions there, and there's naturally going to be some conflict as a result of that. You can't actually not have that on some level, because you need that conflict in order to evolve further and to have aspects of yourself reflected back to you that need resolution, healing. So like a conflict phase is like a healthy part of one's life, but ultimately it's preferable to manifest that place beyond any kind of conflict. The reason why that's beneficial is because there's no longer any pulling, so to speak, back into the wheel. So to like be caught up in the wheel of karma, you have to be invested in some conflict or another. There has to be some hook that will attach you to the wheel and continue to turn you about in that reality. If you don't have a hook for any kind of karmic struggle, any drama, any dispute or anything, then you no longer have a hook to the wheel. Instead of circling in some karmic vortex like consciousness for weeks, months or years at a time, instead you live in what John Lilly calls the centre of the cyclone. The centre of the cyclone is basically where you live from source. You live in a place of eternal being. In that place of eternal being, there's sustenance, there's abundance, there's wellness, there's ambience, there's pretty much everything you could possibly ever want in your life is all there in the center in full abundance. And from that center you can then be a witness to the karmic storms that like circle around the outside. You can either perceive this in meditation, or sometimes in dreams you can go into different dream spheres and you can witness that massive karmic band of energy beings containing all the beings like playing out stories in there. Sometimes in a dream you can like pull back from that and witness that from a very detached perspective. And it's this place beyond the conflict that one wants to be in, because for as long as you're in conflict, you're always going to be invested in karma, and there's always going to be something that's going to pull you out of the perfectness, the perfection of the present. Now, when you don't have any conflict going on in your life, there's nothing to disturb your mind, and the ego tends to thrive on disturbances. The ego needs a certain amount of disturbance in order to stay self-important in a way. So if you're going to crack this issue of transcending the ego, then the key is to transcending any attachment to any kind of conflict in your life. because what happens then, the ego's got nothing more to be aggrieved about. Because the ego hasn't got anything to be aggrieved about, it kind of goes into its proper place. It stops trying to control things, and it naturally recedes back to a healthier standpoint. When it recedes like that, all of a sudden your present reality will be totally and utterly transformed, because you'll be seeing from the beyond ego space. You'll be coming back into the presence of the moment. So many teachers speak about living in the now. What do I mean by living in the now? Well, I basically mean living in the simplicity of the present, living in that notion of a space beyond conflict. Because if you're attached to the past or the future, there's still some kind of attachment or aversion going on. There's still something to try and control, to manipulate, to change, something to not be secure about, something to get distracted about in the mind. All of those thoughts that connect you to past and present lead you out of the center and ultimately back into the wheel. The karmic wheel can only exist in time. For as long as there is time, then there is karma. But when you no longer identify with the past and the future, you're no longer manufacturing any more karma. To manufacture fresh karma, you have to invest in this belief in time. Once you can live in the present and everything's in completeness, in the here and now, what will happen is this linear time that appears to have a past and a future, this linear line, so to speak, will kind of curl up and bend over back upon itself. And what will happen, instead of there being a past and a future, there'll be like this closed circle, and it doesn't matter where you are on that circle, but you'll be in the infinite present. There is no past and future anymore. It doesn't exist for you in that reality. So you get to a point that's known as like 0 point by some teachers, where time basically has no meaning anymore. You live outside of time, you live in the present sustains you, and you're no longer caught up in any attachment to the past and the future, because they don't exist. They're simply illusory realities that are projected out there by your mind. So your mind creates the illusion of a future that you're going to move into, and the mind also holds on to the memory of a past. So both these things are ultimately unreal. An attachment to either one of them will stop you living in the present. Anything that stops you living in the present will deplete your awareness, your power, your energy, and any of those things will naturally then take your ability to manifest in the present out of the way. So manifesting successfully in the present with ease basically requires moving your attention out of the past, anything that's happened there, and moving your attention out of the future, the expectation of a future. Both of those things are undetermined realities. The past has already existed, it can't ever exist again, and the future has not yet been determined. So if you expect something from the future and you have an attachment to a fixed outcome, and that's not like surrendering to the flow. The source exists in the present. When you let go and surrender to it, and source does its own thing, it's not possible to make source give you a fixed outcome, so to speak. This is why it's so important to relax, let go, and surrender into the present moment. So we can use our mind as a very useful mirror to get into this conflict-free space, because quite often we meditate or sit in silence or do anything like that, all kinds of things will come up in the mind. The mind will manufacture things that kind of call upon our awareness, that kind of seek our attention, so to speak. So the key to advance spiritual practice is to notice that and not become disturbed by it, simply become a witness to the dialogue of the mind. And by being a witness to the dialogue of the mind, you allow the mind to do its own thing, but you don't interfere. You see, if you try and shut the mind up and suppress it, it reacts more, and then you have a bigger problem than what you had in the beginning. But if you can just simply be a witness, not interfere, just be a continued witness from a place of awareness, you'll just kind of witness your mind doing its own thing. You'll get to a point where you'll say, okay, that's my mind having a story about this and that, it's just doing this and that. And when you allow it to do this and that, the mind ceases to become kind of attached to its own self-importance. So it will continue to do this and that, but it will contract a bit and kind of recede. It will do it in a faraway place, so to speak. It won't do it in the center of your field. So your life no longer becomes the product of your mental thinking processes or the attachments that your ego has. Instead, your life becomes something totally different. What does it look like? Well, it'd be like you've been born anew. It'll seem like you've been re-emerged in some totally and utterly different reality. It would be crystalline, it would be pure, it would be energizing. And this is the place that exists beyond the mind, beyond the struggle. And the key is to learn how to live in this place. Now, many humans can't live in this place very well. They can't sustain themselves because they have a karmic attachment to things going on in the outside. This is why in this course I've spoken so much about releasing them, because until you've released your attachments to stories in the outside, it's not possible to get that deeper sustenance from source. But when you are clear of those cores, it is possible to live in that presence in a very sustaining way. If you try and go in there too soon before you've cleared all of your cores, it's like going too far up a mountain too quickly. You can't adjust to the altitude, so to speak. So you then have to return down and work in lower realities again, and you don't want to keep doing that. Ultimately, wherever you're going on the spiritual path, you want to keep moving up and staying sustained there. And the way you do that is you continue to be a witness to your mind, and you don't allow your awareness to get pulled into any of its stories. Because the things that will pull you out of that sustenance and source are simply triggers of the mind, kind of stories floating around in the mind that at any moment can trip you up and pull you back into a karmic wheel. This can happen to you at any point of the journey, so there's no time for any complacency, so to speak. It's important to be aware every single day of your life, of your mind, and have a degree of mastery over the mind. You don't let the mind run the show for you. The mind does its thing. You need to have a mind in this reality to some extent to follow through on your inspired actions. But you don't become subservient to your mind, so you control your mind rather than the other way around. When you have that control over your mental processes, you'll then have a lot more power, a lot more energy, a lot more grounding, and the reality that will then manifest itself as a result will simply be the awareness of source. In that awareness of source, everything's very open, everything's there, there's kind of no struggle there. The energy is naturally flowing, there's an openness to receiving that energy, there isn't conflict there isn't negativity, ill will, hatred, nothing, none of that is actually there. So you have a sanctuary where you can just be, and it's that just being which is basically the final work. The spiritual journey is very long. We have to go through lots of various aspects of ourselves. We need to heal lots of our emotions. We need to do a lot of cleansing, a lot of detoxing, a lot of releasing. And that's a journey. It can take people months or even years. It's a necessary part of the journey. But the good news is, once you've done a lot of that burning off in the beginning of all of those denser energies, things do get easier, and then it is less about clearing, it's more about being. So in the beginning we're kind of clearing because we're searching for like a deeper reality, a deeper truth, and the truth of the matter is there's nothing to search for because that reality is forever present. It's just the process of that clearing, that searching, that re-evaluation of ourselves that kind of takes us out of center. And we need to go out of center to a point to actually see as we actually have a center that we can return to. So after many years of going through that searching process, you kind of arrive into a fuller awareness of source. It's just there. You'll know when you come there. It's just like arriving into a very familiar place. It's familiar because that source reality is immortal, it's ageless, it's always been there, it doesn't go anywhere. So when you kind of return there, it's very familiar, it's very energizing. And once you're there, there's nothing else to search for. You don't need to look or journey, so to speak. If you try and look or journey or quest into that space, it'll seem a bit odd, because instead of like journeying upward, it would appear that you're journeying back and downward. You're going back into the dimensions below. If you have that experience, it means you're already in the awareness of source. There's nothing else to do except for just to be in that awareness. Now, that can seem very simple. On the other hand, it can also be complex. The reason why that is because there's a lot of energy there, there's a lot of potency. You know, if you're just going to move into your awareness of source and just to be in that and not act or not respond to any energies or disturbances of the mind, that requires a significant degree of energy mastery. There's so much energy there that your mind will be bursting in a way to make you try and do something with that potency, so it gets diffused. So that's the complexity of it, and the way you overcome that complexity is to master the management of your own energy, so that when you do move into that awareness of source, you don't get sideswiped, because we're talking about energy. It's like 100 times more than any other kind of like standard energy exists out there in this reality. So we're talking about very strong, very concentrated, very potent form of energy, and just to be in that in a very calm, balanced and grounded manner is a tall order. So it's going to take some practice. You know, you're probably going to come into these states a few times, you're going to have that very strong source grounding, and then you might find a few days later your energy is all over the place. So what's basically happened is the energy has been too strong, and what's happened is the strength of energy, because it's not possible to hold at that stage, it like vibrates and it looks for the weakest possible outlet. And usually that's something connected with the mind, so the mind picks up on that energetic disturbance and very quickly manufactures something in the outer to take you out of the presence. It will look like something in the outer disturbed you, but the truth of the matter was it was something inside. The mind manufactured it, projected it outwards, so it looks like it's something outside, but initially the trigger was within. So at this stage of the game, the practice is to come back to this very concentrated and potent energy of source. The chances are you're going to be able to come here several times. You've reached this point of the journey. You know what that power is like. You know what the intensity is like. You know how strong, clear it is. The work is to be able to return to this source awareness again and again in as grounded a manner as possible, in as open and clear manner as possible, so that energy can like enter you and become part of you in a very integrated manner. The idea is you to become an instrument of source. So ultimately, the idea is to merge your awareness with the awareness of this source presence as no longer two different realities. You want to totally become an instrument of source, so that source works through you 24/7 and there isn't ever any separation from source. In order to get there, it's basically like plugging into very intense energy. And as you plug it in, you need to be able to assimilate it, you need to be able to handle it, thus there can't be any major blockages in your body. You know, if you have a big blockage in your body and you go into this awareness of source, that energy is going to try and integrate, but it won't because of that blockage. And then you'll find yourself like crashing out or descending into a lower vibration of reality. You know, if that happens, you don't want to be discouraged, but you just want to work with whatever did that to you, whatever blockage was there, kind of like open that up, breathe into it, breathe some awareness into it, see if there's something to release, to let go of, something to forgive. And once that blockage is gone, next time you have another experience with source, you'll be far more able to handle that energy. And the more you can handle the energy of source, the more intimate you can become with it. The more intimate you can become with source, the more trusting you'll become of it, and the more it will sustain you. It's like a vibration to like ease into. In the beginning there can be a lot of fear and resistance. It's a bit like when people enter into new relationships, a bit like cautious at the beginning. They're kind of like putting a lot of guards up, and in the same way it can be a bit like that with source. The truth of the matter is none of that kind of like conditioning or response is actually necessary really, and all we need to ultimately do is to recognize that source reality is our truth. That's the real us. When you realize that, you'll realize the ego reality that's been fabricated around you is totally false and totally shallow, doesn't have a deeper existence to it. That can seem a bit odd in the beginning, but when you become more integrated with source and you pursue the path of philosophical contemplation, what will happen is this greater, truer awareness of source will become integrated into this more superficial 3D reality. There'll be some balancing out there, and then you'll be able to make sense of this reality in a deeper manner. You'll know how to live in an illusion that still persists even when you know it's an illusion. So you know, this is one of the greatest spiritual paradoxes there are. You know, once you realize this is an illusion and you see the deeper reality, why is the illusion still there? Well, the answer to that is that the illusion wasn't ever really there in the beginning. All you're doing is seeing your idea of the illusion, and it's not possible for your mind to perceive beyond the illusion simply because its perceiving capacities are limited. For as long as you're bound up in any concept, any idea, any belief, it's impossible to exist in that pure reality state. You know, the pure reality state is so separate and distinct from the mind, it's not possible to conceive it in any conceivable manner that you can think of. So when you try and get a grasp of this ultimate reality, you kind of come across like barriers, glass ceilings, so to speak, that you can't appear to actually penetrate. Well, the truth of the matter is you can penetrate those veils, you can know what the ultimate is like, but you can't do it in a conceptual manner. You can't do it with any aspect of your mind. All you can do is like let go into it, and you'll like move through into that space, so to speak, where the alternate actually is. But once you're in there, you won't be able to have an idea about it, you won't be able to conceive about it, you can't even put it into memory, because the alternate reality goes beyond all of that. As soon as you try and grasp it in any manner, the awareness of that alternate reality will disappear again. So the importance of mastering your mind, being able to meditate more proficiently, being able to clear all these cords to conflicts away in your life, the benefit of that is that when you do meditate, your mind will be far less disturbed, and your mind is far more likely to stay still for a longer period of time. When your mind becomes totally and utterly still without the slightest disturbance, then the reality that's hidden beneath this alternate reality, this pure awareness, will suddenly become manifest again. It's very subtle. Sometimes it can be very tricky to see until you've built up a spiritual practice there. Once you can tune in with this pure awareness again and again and again, you become more and more identified with that reality, you become stronger and stronger in it. You then live from that place, you move more and more out of the ego, more and more out of the mind, you live more in this integrated state of pure awareness. And from there, the work is simply just to be, being what Source inspires you to be. Source is also a very playful energy. Yes, it may appear that Source is very serious, I take my work seriously, so I kind of like channel Source in a very serious manner into this reality, but at the same time I know the Source has playful aspects. I'm happy to go to rivers, lakes and waterfalls and chill out. I'm happy to play with a dog just to be in nature and really just to mellow out and be in a good vibe. And that's what being in Source is basically all about, having a mellowed out, easy life. Yes, taking care of our responsibilities, whether there are responsibilities there, but beyond that, giving ourselves permission to expand into a much deeper and more playful state, giving ourselves that time, that freedom, that energy, this time, the freedom, the abundance, the energy, all these things we seek on the spiritual path in order to assist us on the journey are actually present within all of the time. The gifts of Source are forever there, waiting for us to unlock them. The key is not going out there searching for them, but instead simply going within. You get to a certain point of going within there, so to speak, the door is unlocked, and all of those new ways of being will simply become manifest in your life. It will dissolve all of the old, and what takes its place will be far more energizing, sustaining, aware, conscious, vibrant, peaceful, loving, and then you have your amazing life living from the vibration of Source. Ultimately, it's as simple as that. It's to go within, it's to recognize who you are, and to basically live from that place of authenticity. Find out who you are on a deeper level, recognize that you are a being of Source, discover what being a being of Source is all about, and then just to be from there in a way that's aligned with Source. That's the ultimate work, living from the flow, living in the vortex, as some law of attraction teachers will put it. Doesn't matter what you call that, the flow, the Source, the vortex, the great sense, the great spirit, whatever name you want to put on it. The work is simply to discover that place of being in your life and be there as much as you can, and hold that energy as much as you can, because holding and being in that energy is what will sustain you and take you into a deeper peace and a sanctuary from the insanities of the 3D world that you may perceive out there. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say for this video, and I'll speak to you in video 20 very shortly. Free spirit out.